This is the Buffett Mindset channel where we practice patience and calm wealth building daily. If you enjoy these types of videos, consider liking and subscribing. This will mean a lot to the channel. This is why the weak man must always search for distraction, why he cannot sit in silence, why his hands tremble when purpose is demanded, for the reservoir is empty, wasted on moments that left no mark. But the sovereign, the master, the builder, he looks at this same force and he bends it to his will. He takes the ache of desire and converts it into persistence and labor. He takes the fire of passion and converts it into creativity on the page, on the canvas, in the forge, in the enterprise. He takes what others waste and uses it to climb further, faster, stronger than his peers. History proves it. Napoleon Hill himself wrote that every great fortune and every monumental achievement was born in men who had learned the secret of sexual transmutation. Not repression, not indulgence, but mastery. Say it aloud, my energy is sacred. I direct it toward my purpose. I transmute lust into legacy. Repeat it until the very thought of indulgence without purpose feels a theft, until the very temptation to waste feels a betrayal, until your body itself obeys the command to build. This is the secret of charisma. Why so men walk into a room and others cannot look away? It is not magic, it is energy withheld from waste, redirected into presence, sharpened into command. Women sense it, men respect it, the world bends to it. For it is the essence of creation made visible in flesh. And this is why so many who cannot master it appear dull, anxious, without force. Their eyes betray their loss, their posture reveals their emptiness, their voice trembles with lack. The sovereign man is different. He learns to hold, to channel, to endure the wave of desire without breaking, and then to ride that wave into the heights of achievement. This is the mark of a builder, of a king, of a man who leaves legacy instead of whispers. Do not mistake me. The temptation will come fierce and frequent, but temptation is not enemy, it is training. Each moment of mastery strengthens your grip on yourself, and each act of transmutation adds to the empire of your spirit. Edison did not stumble into invention because he was lucky. He was relentless because his energy was not scattered. Da Vinci did not create a vision centuries ahead of time because he was gifted alone, but because he preserved the clarity of his mind. Carnegie, Ford, Rockefeller, Buffett, all men who knew indulgence would cost them clarity, and clarity is the throne upon which fortune sits. So ask yourself, will you be remembered to the man who wasted his fire on fantasies, or the man who forged his fire into a force so great the world could not ignore it? The law is eternal. Energy cannot be destroyed, but it can be wasted and it can be elevated. You are not being asked to suppress desire, you are being commanded to master it. The moment you do, laziness dies, doubt dissolves, hesitation flees, and the man who once stumbled becomes the man who builds unshaken legacy. The first ritual of mastery is solitude, for without silence you cannot govern the storm within. Most men waste their energy not only in indulgence but in constant noise, endless chatter, idle distraction, the buzzing of devices, the endless flood of stimulation that keeps the mind restless. The sovereign carves out an hour, a corner of the day, when no noise enters. In that silence he faces the fire. He allows the desire to rise, but instead of fleeing into fantasy or distraction, he holds it, studies it, commands it. He writes his aims. He breathes until the flame steadies. He takes the very restlessness that once drove him into weakness and converts it into clarity. Try this tonight. When the desire does, do not run. Sit with it. Breathe through it. Ask, what am I to build with this fire? What empire, what work, what chapter of my destiny is demanding this energy? And then write, move, or labor toward it. This act alone begins the alchemy. The second ritual is labor. Energy left unused turns toxic, and lust unfocused turns corrosive. The sovereign man understands that his body was built not for indulgence, but for exertion. He chooses to sweat daily, to strain daily, to demand from his muscles and lungs the effort that channels restless fire into physical strength. The weak man wastes in bed. The master rises to command his frame. Every push-up, every mile, every weight lifted is a reminder. I govern my body does not govern me. The very hormones that once pulled you downward will now lift you upward, sharpen your mind, clear your fog, and ignite your will. The third ritual is creation. Every man must build. Whether it is business, art, invention, strategy, or legacy, the sovereign man gives his fire a form. A book unwritten, an idea unexplored, a venture delayed, these are graves for wasted energy. The disciplined man says, if I have an urge, I will build. If temptation calls, he sits at his desk, his forge, his instrument, and he converts that urge into a tangible mark upon the earth. This is why the greats were prolific. Their fire did not consume them in secret. It shone through works that outlived them. The fourth ritual is association. The weak man surrounds himself with companions who normalize indulgence. The sovereign surrounds himself with men who normalize discipline. Iron sharpens iron, and the fire within you will either be fed by fools or forged by kings. Choose wisely who shares your time, who shapes your rhythm, who speaks into your vision. For their standards bid become your own, and if you walk with drifters, you drift. The fifth ritual is repetition. Mastery is not built in a sealed act of restraint, but in 1,000 daily choices. Every time you resist indulgence, you do not weaken, you grow. Every time you redirect the fire, you strengthen the circuit of command. The sovereign knows that the first few days may feel like battle, but he also knows that every day after bends the scale further in his favor. Eventually, the very thought of wasting energy will disgust him, and the fire will automatically flow into labor, vision, and legacy. Say it aloud. I do not waste my fire. I transmute desire into creation. My energy is sacred, and I govern it with law. Repeat it until your bones feel it, until your eyes sharpen, until your work glows with a force that others cannot explain. They will call it charisma. They will call it talent. But you will know the truth. It is mastery. It is the invisible law, the alchemy of lust into legacy, the command of self that crowns kings. Temptation, my friend, is not your enemy. It is your training ground. Too many men curse the very storm that was meant to sharpen their grip. They feel the wave of desire rise, and instead of holding steady, they collapse, ashamed, defeated, convinced they are broken. But hear me, the storm is not sent to destroy you, it is sent to prove you. A rider is not called master of his horse until the beast rears and bucks and he still holds the reins. A man is not called sovereign until the fire rises in his flesh and he commands it into his forge. If you would build a legacy, understand this temptation is the weight by which your spiritual muscles grow. Without it, you remain soft. With it, you become steel. Most men fail because they expect life to remove temptation once they decide to be disciplined. They believe the battle will get easier, that the voice of indulgence will fade. But the truth is harsher and greater. The voice never leaves. The appetite never dies. The river of desire flows until your last breath. But while the weak drown in it, the sovereign builds dams, channels, aqueducts. He uses the current to power his empire. The same water that floods a village can light a city when harnessed. And so it is with lust. It is not to be killed but converted, not to be feared but forged. Consider the lives of great builders. Joseph, betrayed and enslaved, rose in Egypt not because he was never tempted, but because he refused the arms of another man's wife and held to his vision of destiny. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, wrote nightly in his meditations of the need to master the passions, not because he had none, but because he knew that if they ruled him, Rome would crumble. Nikola Tesla, eccentric and consumed by invention, claimed that much of his creative genius was born from transmuted energy, that what others spent in pursuit of pleasure, he spent in the birth of ideas that would electrify the world. Now let me give you a cowboy truth. The greenhorn thinks he is strong because he has never been tested. But when the storm breaks, when the herd stampedes, when the fire licks the horizon, he flees, because his strength was on theory. The seasoned rider does not boast, but when the storm comes, he grips the reins, digs his heels, and rides straight through. So it is with temptation. Do not claim mastery until you have faced the flame and stood unshaken. Do not call yourself disciplined until you have looked desire in the eye and redirected it into creation. The test is not to be avoided. It is the very crown you seek, and then is the warning. The man who indulges without resistance does not remain the same. Every surrender rewires his mind. Every wasted hour engraves a groove in his subconscious. Soon he cannot stand silence, cannot hold focus, cannot remember what it feels like to command himself. He becomes a slave with invisible chains, smiling outwardly but broken within. This is why mediocrity spreads so easily, because it disguises itself as harmless indulgence, harmless compromise, harmless ease. But these tiny surrenders pile high until the man himself is buried. So when temptation rises in you, do not curse it. Do not flee from it. Stand before it in a king, before an envoy. Demand to know what this energy is meant to build. Demand to know what it must be sent. Take its fire. Put it into your labor, your words, your training, your craft. Transmute it into fuel for the empire of your soul. This is how legacies are built, not in the absence of temptation, but in the mastery of it. Say this aloud when the fire comes. I am sovereign over myself. I do not waste energy. I transmute desire into power. Every temptation strengthens my mastery. Repeat it until the storm itself bows to your command, until your very body remembers that you are no longer servant to instinct, but master of destiny. Persistence, charisma, magnetism, these are not gifts handed down at birth. They are the natural byproducts of a man who has learned to master his inner fire. Think carefully on this. Why do certain men walk into a room and draw every eye without speaking a word? Why does their presence shift the air, make others sit straighter, make conversations pause? It is not because of wealth alone, nor looks, nor titles. It is because their energy is concentrated. They have not scattered it into waste. They have not diluted it into indulgence. They have forged it, refined it, contained it. And that concentrated fire radiates outward dade invisible command. This is why the scriptures, the philosophers, the sages, all warned of dissipating one essence in lust, not because desire is evil, but because uncontrolled desire leaks power. A leaky vessel cannot hold oil, and a man who wastes his energy cannot hold authority. Authority begins in the unseen. It begins in the marrow, in the furnace of the soul. When you govern that, the world recognizes it even if it cannot name it. They call it confidence. They call it gravitas. They call it something about him. But you will know it is simply mastery. Now let us speak of persistence. The weak man begins many things but finishes few. His fire sputters out before the work is complete, but his energy was already spent elsewhere. But the sovereign, who guards his energy and redirects it, finds that he can labor long on to paint others collapse. He can endure rejection, setbacks, storms. As his reservoir is deep, where others draw from a shallow stream of motivation, he draws from an underground river of transmuted desires. Can rise early, toil late, repeat the same small disciplines daily, not because he is superhuman, but because he has stopped spilling his fuel into the dirt. Charisma is the outward flame of inward mastery. When a man speaks with authority born of discipline, his words cut deeper. When he looks into the eyes of another, his gaze holds weight. When he sets forth a vision, men lean in, not because he begs, but as they feel the power behind his words. The energy that once leaked out in indulgence now shines through his presence. He is magnetism. He attracts allies, opportunities, favor, because the law is simple. Energy attracts energy. Waste attracts waste. Mastery attracts mastery. Think of the builders of industry, the leaders of nations, the artists whose names outlasted centuries. Their charisma was not empty charm. It was the fragrance of mastery. Edison commanded investors and workers alike because they felt his relentless focus. Carnegie inspired loyalty because his belief radiated certainty. Even Da Vinci, eccentric and solitary, carried an aura that drew patrons and disciples because his mastery of self was evident in every brushstroke, every design, every word. Now, Let us not hide from the truth. Most men today lack this aura because they refuse to pay the price of mastery. They indulge without restraint, speak without thought, scatter without aim, and so their presence is light as straw, their words quickly forgotten, their lives soon buried in the dust of mediocrity. But you would rise, must pay the price. You must direct your energy daily. You must master yourself in silence before you can command in public. Here is the practice. When desire surges, instead of reaching for indulgence, reach for creation. When temptation calls, write your vision, labor in your craft, sweat in your training. When weakness whispers, speak aloud your law. I do not waste. I transmute. My fire builds my destiny. Repeat it until the body itself obeys. Repeat it until the old reflex dies and the new rhythm is born. Then, and only then, will persistence be natural, charisma inevitable, magnetism automatic. And remember this, mastery is not cold. It is not sterile suppression. It is warmth. It is life. It is fire rightly directed. The sovereign man does not live less. He lives more. His relationships are richer. His work more fruitful. His presence more alive. For he has not killed his desire. He has enthroned it. He has not buried his fire. He has crowned it. This is the law of transmutation. This is how lust becomes legacy. The daily code of the sovereign is not theory, it is practice, repeated until it is law within the flesh. For what a man does each day becomes his character, and what his character becomes, his destiny cannot escape. Let us then lay down the code that transmutes fire into fortune. The first principle is guard the gates. Your eyes and ears are doors. What you watch, what you listen to, what you entertain when you are alone, writes instruction into your subconscious. Most men we can hear. They think indulgence is harmless if hidden. They think imagination is free. But every image, every word, every fantasy is a seed. Guard the gates, for weeds grow faster than wheat. If you must look upon visions that strengthen you. If you must listen to words that command you higher. If you must imagine the man you are becoming, not the weakness you are fleeing. The second principle is discipline the body. Your body is not thine enemy, it is a servant. But a servant left unchecked becomes unruly. The sovereign sets rituals for his body, rising early, training daily, resting wisely, eating with intent. He does not live for pleasure, but he does not despise it either. He rules it. He eats not until sick, but until fueled. He trains not for vanity, but for strength. He rests not for laziness, but for renewal. And in every action he whispers the law. My body obeys me. When the fire of desire rises, a disciplined body obeys the command to redirect. An undisciplined body rebels and demands indulgence. That is why the greats were men of ritual. Their bodies were not perfect, but they were obedient. The third principle is fix your aim. Drifting energy leaks into indulgence. Focused energy builds empires. Most men fall to lust because they have nothing greater to live for. Their energy finds no outlet in creation, so it spills into destruction. But the sovereign sets for him a definite purpose. It may be to build a business, to write a book, to raise a family, to master a craft. The aim itself matters less than the discipline of having one. For an aim is a magnet, drawing scattered energies into alignment. A man without aim is a fire without a furnace. A man with aim is a fire that can forge steel. The fourth principle is transmute in the moment. Mastery is not built in theory, it is proven in temptation. When desire rises, the sovereign does not pretend it is absent. He names it, he acknowledges it, but then he directs it. He channels the urge into labor, into movement, into creation. The man who is about to waste himself on indulgence turns instead to his pen, his tools, his work, and there he finds the same energy that once betrayed him now fuels him. This is the pivot where destiny is won or lost. The fifth principle is repeat without excuse. The old self will whisper, once won't matter, tomorrow I will do better. No one will know. That is the voice of the drifter. The sovereign rejects it. He repeats the law daily, even when tired, even when unseen, even when tempted. For repetition engraves, and what is engraved cannot be erased. Every time you obey the code, The old chains weaken. Every time you transmute the fire, the new man grows stronger, until one day, what once felt impossible feels natural, and what once enslaved you no longer has any claim. The sixth principle is declare your law aloud. The subconscious obeys the tongue. If you speak weakness, you reinforce weakness. If you speak mastery, you engrave mastery. Morning and night, the sovereign declares, I am master of my fire. I transmute desire into creation. I do no waste, I build, I rise. Say it not softly, but with conviction. Say it until your bones know it, until your actions echo it, until the world around you bends to it. And the seventh principle is serve something greater than yourself. If your only reason for mastery is pride, we fall. Pride feeds indulgence. But if your reason is legacy, family, vision, or God, we endure. The sovereign remembers that the fire is not his alone. It was given to him to create, to provide, to lift others, to build something that outlasts him. And when the temptation to waste calls, he remembers that to waste himself is to rob his future children, his people, his destiny. That memory gives him strength. Practice these daily, and we find that lust no longer commands you. Instead, it becomes your servant, your fuel, your hidden advantage. While others waste themselves in secrecy, we build in silence. While others stumble, you rise. And one day the world will look upon what you have built, upon the strength of your frame, the fire of your eyes, the weight of your presence, and they will not know the secret, but you will know that mastery of the inner fire is mastery of destiny. The proof of mastery is not spoken in secret oaths, but revealed in the outward fruit of a man's life. Wealth, influence, legacy, and dominion are not granted to the clever, nor to the educated alone, nor even to the ambitious. They are reserved for the man who has first conquered himself. For what uts is ambition if it leaks into indulgence? What uts is brilliance if it burns out in shame? What uts is inheritance if it is squandered by appetites that cannot be ruled? History is littered with names of men who rose fast on talent, wealth, or birthright, but fell because they never learned to govern their fire. Kings who squandered thrones in pursuit of pleasure, generals who lost campaigns as they were slaves to the flesh, businessmen who collapsed under scandal because discipline was never stronger than desires. They are cautionary tales, written in bold for any man willing to look. But opposite them are the sovereigns, those who ruled their fire and turned it into fuel. Consider Joseph, cast into slavery, yet rising in Egypt because he governed his integrity when temptation came. Had he surrendered to indulgence, his name would have vanished into history. Instead, mastery lifted him to rule. Consider Washington, who commanded armies with steady resolve, not because he was free of fear or temptation, but because his discipline exceeded his desire. Consider Buffett, whose patience in markets is the modern ed of the same law: restraint, redirection, mastery over impulse. He does not chase every stock, every rumor, every opportunity. He says no to 99 to guard the one. This is transmutation in the realm of finance. The lust for quick gain is denied, the energy is redirected into patience, and the result is compound wealth that outlasts empires. Here is the secret. Sexual energy is only the clearest symbol of a greater principle. Lust is simply desire unruled. It may be lust for pleasure, lust for riches, lust for applause. The form changes, but the law does not. Desire left unchecked, devour the man. Desire harnessed and transmuted, builds his dynasty. The true sovereign learns that all appetites must knee before his purpose. He eats not to indulge, but to fuel. He works not to boast, but to build. He loves not to consume, but to create. In all things he practices transmutation. And when this becomes rhythm, the fruits multiply. Wealth comes because the fire that once wasted itself on indulgence now burns in the furnace of enterprise. Influence comes because the man who governs himself radiates a presence that cannot be faked. His eyes are steady. His speech is weighty. His steps are firm. Men sense power in him, because they sense mastery in him. And legacy comes because he plants his energy into works that outlive him, into children, students, books, institutions, enterprises that carry his name beyond the rave. But let us speak plainly. This mastery is not won in public applause, it is won in private battles. The world sees the fruit, but not the fight. It does not see the late nights when temptation whispers. It does not see the inner dialogue when desire surges. It does not see the silent victories when a man chooses creation over consumption, purpose over indulgence, destiny over drift. Yet those unseen battles are the foundation of seen greatness. For the man who conquers himself daily is unconquerable by the world. Yet hear this, mastery is not a one-time victory. It is a law practiced until it is identity. You will be tested again and again, for the fire never dies. But each test is not your enemy. It is your opportunity to prove law, to engrave mastery deeper into your being. Every temptation resisted is energy redirected. Every indulgence denied is legacy gained. Every day you transmute the fire, you write another line in the story of a life that could not be broken. So I ask you, what will you do with your fire? Will you waste it in shadows, feeding fantasies that leave you empty, or will you forge it into light that builds nations? Will you bow to your impulses and leave nothing behind but regret? Or will you stand sovereign over yourself and leave a legacy that your children will honor? The choice is daily, the law is eternal, and the fruit is inevitable. Govern your fire and the world will call you master. Waste it and the world will forget you. This is no sermon, this is structure. This is no suggestion, this is law. Transmute lust into legacy and conquer thyself. For until you do, you have conquered nothing. The man who waits for mastery to appear suddenly in his life is already defeated, for no great transformation comes by accident. Mastery is carved in ritual, etched into the hours of the day until the pattern becomes the man himself. You cannot conquer lust, greed, distraction, or drift once and believe the battle is over. The fire will return, the impulse will whisper, the old paths will call, and in those moments the unprepared man falls. But the prepared man has weapons, daily disciplines that redirect the energy before it betrays him. This is why I speak now, not in poetry, but in practice. If you would transmute lust into legacy, you must build a furnace strong enough to hold the fire. That furnace is ritual. The morning is your first battleground. At dawn, the body is fresh. The subconscious is still soft from the night, and the energy that would otherwise scatter must be given command. The drifter reaches for distraction the moment he wakes. His hand finds the glowing screen, his mind absorbs the noise of the world, and his fire is stolen before the day has begun. But the sovereign rises differently. He commands his mind before the world can intrude. He speaks aloud his aim, his law, his identity. He declares, I am master of myself. My fire builds my legacy. I transmute desire into discipline, discipline into creation, creation into destiny. He repeats this until the words no longer feel spoken but lived. Then he moves his body, push-ups, stretching, running, lifting, not for vanity but for governance. Physical exertion is the first act of discipline, reminding the flesh who is master. By the time his day begins, his fire is already chained to purpose. Midday is the second battleground, for it is in the heat of the world chaos that temptation often rises strongest. Stress, fatigue, boredom. These are the shadows where indulgence whispers. The weak man seeks escape in fantasy, in gossip, in idle indulgence, in secret detour that drain him. But the sovereign has built a ritual of redirection. When he feels the impulse stir, he does not panic, nor does he shame himself. He breathes deep, he recalls his aim, and he gives the energy an immediate task. Writes, he builds, he sells, he creates. He knows that lust, like all desire, is raw energy waiting for command. He does not waste it. He reassigns it. In that moment, the energy becomes focus, persistence, magnetism. This is the essence of transmutation, not denial, but redirection. The fire still burns, but it now fuels the engine of his work. The evening is the final battleground, and perhaps the most dangerous, for it is when the body is tired and the mind craves release. The common man thinks he deserves indulgence at night. He believes his weakness is justified because he has worked. But the sovereign knows that the hours before sleep are the most fertile ground for programming. Whatever you feed your mind before you close your eyes will replay endlessly in your subconscious until dawn. The weak man feed his mind noise, lust, fear, distraction, and he rises weaker than he was. But the sovereign guards the gate. He closes his day with reflection, writing what he has conquered and what he must strengthen. He repeats his chief aim aloud, impressing it deep into the subconscious. He visualizes his legacy as if it were already complete. He gives his mind no poison to dwell upon, only command, only order, only vision. Then he rests, not as a man escaping the day, but as a king preparing for another. These three rituals, morning can, midday redirection, evening programming, are the structure by which lust is transmuted into legacy. Practice them daily, and the fire that once betrayed you will rebuild you. Ignore them, and the fire will consume you in silence, leaving you hollow. Do not underestimate the power of this. Entire dynasties have been destroyed because men failed to govern their nights. Entire empires have been built because men ruled their mornings. The law is eternal. The fire must burn. The only question is whether it burns you or builds you. And do not think this is theory. Look again at the giants. Leonardo da Vinci practiced nightly visualizations of the works he wished to create, feeding his subconscious before sleep. Edison worked through fatigue, channeling restless energy into invention rather than indulgence. Carnegie rose each morning with a singular aim pressed upon his mind until it shaped his every decision. These men did not drift into genius, they programmed it. They took the same fire that ruins millions and redirected it into persistence, vision, creation. Their legacies are proof. So now, I turn to you. What rituals guard your fire? Do you rise with command or with chaos? Do you redirect temptation or drown in it? Do you program your subconscious at night or leave it unguarded to recycle weakness? These are not small questions. They are the blueprint of your destiny. For the man who builds rituals of mastery will one day be called master by others. The man who neglects them will always be ruled, not by kings or governments, but by his own impulses. Understand this deeply. To conquer lust is not to erase desire, but to elevate it. To conquer laziness is not to destroy rest, but to redefine it. To conquer drift is not to end movement, but to give it direction. The sovereign does not repress life. He redirects it. He does not kill the fire. He wields it. And that is why he builds legacies while others leave only ashes. So I command you now, choose. Do not wait for inspiration, for perfect conditions, for more strength to arrive. Strength is built in the choosing. Decide now that your fire serves your purpose. Decide now that your flesh obeys your spirit. Decide now that lust, once your master, is now your servant. For until you do, you will never rule anything greater than yourself. But once you do, the world itself bends. For the man who conquers himself conquers all. When a man begins to govern his fire, something peculiar happens that he cannot see at first, but others cannot help but notice. His presence changes. His words carry weight even before they are spoken. His eyes, once dull with indulgence, now burn with an intensity that unsettles the drifting man and inspires the one seeking direction. This is not superstition. It is law. For the same energy that once scattered into weakness is now concentrated into essence, and essence radiates. Men kallel charisma, women kallel magnetism. Sages kallel aura, but at its root, it is simply mastery, discipline transmuted into power. The man who governs his lower self becomes irresistible to the higher order of life. Opportunities approach him, doors open to him, people trust him without knowing why. He does not beg for attention, he commands it without demand. Understand this well, your energy is always speaking even when your mouth is closed. The indulgent man carries a nervous current. He cannot hold eye contact. His handshake feels slippery. His speech is riddled with hesitation. Subconsciously, others sense he cannot govern himself and therefore cannot be trusted with anything greater. But the man who has mastered himself speaks even in silence. He can sit quietly in a room and yet our eyes are drawn to him. Why? Because discipline emanates. When you control your most primal urges, the world recognizes you as one who can control kingdoms. This is why leaders of consequence rarely need to prove themselves with noise. Their very presence is proof. Think of the great conqueror of industry, invention, and nation. Carnegie could stand in a boardroom without a word, and yet every man there knew who was king. Rockefeller, calm and deliberate, unnerved rivals with his quiet intensity. Edison, restless focus, created an atmosphere where failure became irrelevant because his certainty bent the belief of those around him. These men did not need flamboyance. Their mastery radiated as invisible authority. And at the root of it, whether they named it or not, was sexual energy transmuted into thought, focus, persistence, and magnetism. Now look to the man enslaved by indulgence. He may speak loudly, boast of his conquests, brag of his appetites, but behind his noise is hollowness. His energy leaks through his eyes, his posture, his careless movements. He is restless, unsteady, chasing attention because he cannot command respect. The difference between the two men is not wealth, not status, not birth. It is mastery. One has bent his fire into a blade. The other has let his fire consume him. And here lies the secret few dare to speak. The world bends not to talent, not to chance, not to noise, but to mastery of self. The man who rules himself rules others without seeking to. For all men, even unconsciously, are drawn to order, to strength, to discipline. They crave it, or as most do possess it. And when they meet a man who does, they follow. This is why transmutation is not merely about personal success. It is about leadership, legacy, and influence. When you master your energy, you become the axis around which others revolve. But let me warn you, the greater your mastery, the greater the temptation will become. Life will test your resolve by offering shortcuts, indulgences disguised as rewards, pleasures disguised as progress. You will be tempted to believe that but you have built till success. You can afford to waste the fire again, but the law does not bend. The moment you return to indulgence, your magnetism fades, your clarity dulls, your influence weak. That is why mastery is not a one-time event, but a lifelong practice. The sovereign knows this. He sharp-turns his edge daily. He never lets his furnace go cold. So how do you build charisma, magnetism, and presence that cannot be denied? By daily transmutation. Every impulse redirected into creation, every desire elevated into vision, every distraction transformed into focus. Write when you want to wander, build when you want to indulge, move when you want to drift. In time, the pattern becomes your identity. And when identity changes, destiny cannot resist. Consider again the farmer tending his field. He waters not once, but daily. He removes weeds not once, but whenever they appear. He does not say, I worked yesterday so I can neglect today. He knows that neglect today destroys tomorrow. The same is true of your inner fire. Guard it daily, direct it daily, protect it daily. And in time, your field becomes a harvest others cannot ignore. They will wonder what force moved you. They will ask what secret you carry, but you know. It was no secret, no trick, no accident. It was law. The man who transmutes lust into legacy becomes not only master of himself, but a lighthouse for others. His discipline shines, his presence calms, his words inspire. Because they are not mere words, they are backed by a life of alignment. Inelity is the paradox. The man who no longer chases indulgence begins to receive abundance. Wealth finds him, respect follows him, influence bends to him. For the world always bows to the man who first conquered himself. So let this be your charge. Stop wasting your fire. Stop scattering your essence. Stop bowing to impulses that were meant to serve you. Every time you indulge weakness, you steal from your legacy. Every time you redirect energy into creation, you add another stone to your empire. Choose wisely, daily, relentlessly. For the fire within you not die. It will either build or burn. The choice is yours and the consequence eternal. Persistence, my friend, is the final proof of mastery. Any man can act once. Any man can speak boldly for a day. But to rise day after day, to face resistance with calm determination, to endure storms without surrender, that is persistence. And persistence is nothing more than transmuted energy, fire harnessed, desire elevated, lust redirected into the steady rhythm of progress. Without it, men burn bright for a moment and vanish. With it, they become eternal. Think of Edison. 10,000 attempts at creating light, 10,000 nights of failure, fatigue, and mockery. The indulgent man would have surrendered after the first 100, the first 1,000, perhaps even the first whisper of doubt. But Edison's fire was not scattered, it was harnessed, redirected, and transmuted into persistence. That is why he endured. That is why he lit the world. Or think of Lincoln, born into poverty, mocked, defeated in election after election, crushed by grief, yet never broken. What made him rise from defeat after defeat? It was not talent alone. It was a fire deeper than feeling, a persistence that could not be drowned. His passion, his grief, his desire for justice were transmuted into endurance. And endurance shaped destiny. Now compare them to the man enslaved by indulgence. He speaks loudly of ambition. He burns with desire, but his fire burns out after a week, a month, a season. He cannot persist as his energy leaks into weakness. He begins with noise but ends in silence. His dreams are buried not by failure but by fatigue. He lacked persistence, and persistence comes on through mastery of self. Here is a law. Lust scattered becomes weakness. Lust redirected becomes persistence. Every urge resisted and elevated becomes another layer of endurance. Every impulse mastered becomes another brick in your fortress of resilience. And when you have built enough bricks, storms no longer frighten you. They cannot. For your persistence is not borrowed, not fragile, not dependent on mood. It is built from the deepest fire in you, the fire of life itself. Think also of Buffett, who sat in patience while others chased indulgence in markets, who persisted in the same steady rhythm of discipline for decades. His persistence was not boring, it was powerful, and cause he mastered himself. His persistence compounded into fortune. That is the secret the world overlooks. Persistence is not talent, it is not chance, it is not inspiration, it is mastery of energy, daily redirected into rhythm. So let us speak plainly. If you cannot persist, it is not because you are weak, it is because your fire is scattered. It is because you have not yet transmuted your energy into rhythm. You are still at war with yourself. But the moment you decide to govern your lower nature, the moment you redirect desire into discipline, persistence becomes automatic. You no longer ask, can I endure? You simply endure. You no longer hope, will I continue? You simply continue. This is why transmutation is the crown of self-mastery. It creates men who cannot be stopped. It builds a rhythm so deep that storms become irrelevant, critics become noise, failure becomes fuel. The indulgent man is fragile because his energy is wasted. The master is unshakable because his energy is concentrated. And the world, though it may resist for a season, eventually bows to persistence. But I must warn you, persistence is forged in small moments, not grand gestures. It is forged in the moment you choose to redirect your energy rather than indulge it. It is forged when you rise from bed even when tired, when you write one more page even when uninspired, when you build one more brick even when no one applauds. Every small act of persistence compounds into a fortress. And one day you look back and realize that while others quit, you endured, and because you endured, you conquered. Now let us turn to resilience. For persistence without resilience is brittle. Persistence is continuing the journey. Resilience is bending without breaking when the journey shifts. Resilience, too, is the fruit of transmutation. When your energy is scattered, you panic at setbacks. You despair at obstacles. But when your energy is harnessed, every blow strengthens you. You do not crumble. You adapt. You rise again, stronger than before. Consider Joseph, sold into slavery, betrayed, imprisoned, yet he rose again to rule Egypt. His resilience was not chance, it was mastery. He redirected despair into faith, betrayal into discipline, imprisonment into preparation. Every setback transmuted into strength. That is resilience. And you, if you govern your fire, will discover the same. You will no longer curse trials. You will no longer shrink at pain. You will see every storm as a test of your mastery, every temptation as an invitation to grow stronger. You will not avoid pain. You will transmute it. And in doing so, you become untouchable. So let me give you the final truth in this chapter. Transmutation builds persistence. Persistence builds resilience. And resilience builds destiny. No man can stop you if you govern yourself. No storm can rake you if you redirect your fire. No failure can bury you if your energy is transmuted into rhythm. This is not poetry. This is not philosophy. This is law. You have within you the fire of creation. It can burn you or it can build you. It can enslave you or it can crane you. The choice is daily, moment by moment, but the result is eternal. Do not waste another day scattering your power. Redirect it, harness it, transmute it. In watch ye's persistence and resilience carry you to heights you once thought impossible. Vision, my friend, is the mark of true kingship. Any man can dream, but few can see with clarity. Fewer still can act upon that sight, and almost none can hold that vision long enough for the world to obey it. Vision is not fantasy. It is disciplined imagination fueled by transmuted energy. It is desire elevated into purpose, fire forged into light. Without vision, persistence is maimed, resilience is wasted, and discipline is blind. But when your fire is governed and directed into vision, the world bends. Think of Moses standing before a people enslaved, yet carrying a vision of freedom that no whip would erase. Think of Churchill in the darkest hours of war, seeing victory when others saw only defeat. Think of Carnegie rising from poverty with a clear vision of industry, steel, and legacy. None of these men possessed vision by chance. They harnessed the fire of their inner desire, stripped it of indulgence, and redirected it into clear mental pictures repeated with conviction until reality itself was reshaped. Vision begins, these appear. It is birtheth in the silence of your mind, but it must be nurtured with faith and fed with energy. Most men never guard their vision. They allow distraction, indulgence, and doubt to scatter it. They see themselves for a moment too great, but then lust for comfort, for pleasure, for validation steals the energy that was meant to give life to their vision, and so the pit fades and they drift. But the master never lets the pit fade. He returns to it daily. He waters it with persistence. He guards it with resilience. He fuels it with the fire of transmuted desire. That is why his vision endures when others vanish. Now let us speak of leadership, for vision without leadership is barren. Leadership is not the loudest voice, nor the man with the crowd. It is the man whose mastery of self compels others to follow. It is the man who governs his own fire so well that others sense stability in his presence. The indulgent man may draw followers with charm, but he cannot keep them, for indulgence breeds instability. His leadership is fragile, dependent on applause, vulnerable to temptation. But the master, who governs his energy and transmutes it into discipline, exudes a magnetism that no storm can shake. Others trust him, but he cannot be bought, cannot be swayed, cannot be broken. This is why transmutation is not merely personal, it is generational. When a man masters himself, he builds a foundation that others can build upon. His discipline becomes legacy. His vision becomes inheritance. His persistence becomes tradition. Children of such men grow with fire in their eyes and purpose in their blood. Communities shaped by such men endure storms, prosper in famine, rise in crisis. Entire nations are forged on the backs of men who took their lust, their desire, their lower energy, and transmuted it into leadership. Look at Solomon. His mastery in youth brought wisdom, wealth, and empire. The nations of the earth came to hear his words, not because he indulged, but because he transmuted. Yet when he drifted, when indulgence returned, when his fire was scattered into desires without discipline, his kingdom fractured. Legacy requires continual transmutation. Leadership requires constant vigilance. The man who begins as master must remain master, or his kingdom will be divided. Now consider Buffett. Decade after decade, while markets raged with indulgence, while men chased lust for quick gains, Buffett remained steady. His fire was not spent on greed nor on fear, but on clarity, patience, and disciplined vision. And because he transmuted his energy into focus and leadership, his name became synonymous with trust, stability, and mastery. His fortune was not merely wealth, it was legacy, built brick by brick on the furnace of transmuted energy. And so I ask you, what will your legacy be? Will you leave behind ashes of indulgence, fleeting pleasures, and wasted years? Or will you leave monuments of mastery, structures of vision, rivers of influence that endure long after your body is gone? Legacy is not written in one day, nor with one act. It is written daily, moment by moment, in every act of transmutation. Every time you govern your desire, you build a brick in your legacy. Every time you redirect your energy, you write another line in your story. Every day you persist when others quit, you extend your influence beyond yourself. Do not think small. Do not believe the lie that your mastery ends with you. Every action you take ripples outward. Every victory over yourself empowers others to rise. Every moment of discipline teaches those who watch you. You may not know their names, they may not applaud you, but your energy, once transmuted into vision and leadership, becomes a current that reshapes generations. This is why indulgence is so costly. It steals not only your power, but the power of all who would have been lifted by your example. Here, then, is the final law of this chapter. The fire within you was never given merely for your pleasure. It was given for creation, for leadership, for legacy. To waste it is theft. To indulge it is betrayal. But to govern it, to transmute it, to elevate it into vision and leadership, that is the highest act of manhood. That is how mortals become eternal. So rise, govern yourself, guard your fire, transmute your desire, build with persistence, endure with resilience, lead with vision, and leave behind a legacy that no storm can erase, no critic can diminish, no indulgence can undo. For the man who masters himself writes not only his own story, but the story of all who come after him. And that story is immortality. Now listen close. His ears where most men stumble. They nod at wisdom. They admire the idea of mastery. They agree with the law of transmutation. But when the morning comes and desire stirs in their blood, they collapse. They surrender to the old pattern, and with it, they surrender their birthright. Knowledge without application is useless. Truth without ritual dies as theory. If you conquer yourself, if you transmute lust into legacy, then you must build daily habits that channel this fire into creation. The first ritual is attention. Energy follows thought. Wherever your mind lingers, your body soon follows. The indulgent man feeds his fire by focusing on temptation, on images, on fantasies, on words that stir desire without purpose. He allows his attention to become a slave, and thus his energy is enslaved with it. But the master sees his attention at its root. When desire rises, he does not feed it with fantasy. He feeds his mind with vision. He replaces the fit of indulgence with the fit of purpose. He sees his business rising, his family flourishing, his name remembered, and by changing the image, he changes the current. The second ritual is motion. Energy must move. When suppressed, it festers. When wasted, it weak. But when directed, it strengthens. The man who seeks mastery does not sit idle when the fire stirs. He moves. He works. He trains. He builds. He takes the raw current of desire, it pours it into the sweat of labor, the discipline of exercise, the craft of creation. Think of Edison pacing his laboratory through endless nights. Think of Michelangelo striking stone until the figure emerged. These men were not free from desire. They redirected it through motion until lust became invention, until hunger became legacy. The third ritual is expression. Desire is energy, and energy must be expressed. But expression is not indulgence, it is elevation. The master writes, the master speaks, the master composes, the master invents. He takes the invisible current and shapes it into words, into art, into enterprise. This is why the greatest men are creators. They do not run from fire, they forge it into form. Every time you choose to express your energy in creation rather than indulgence, you carve a new groove in your mind. You tell your subconscious, this is what we do with fire. And over time, that groove becomes your default. The fourth ritual is discipline of the body. Your vessel is the furnace of your fire. If the furnace is weak, the fire consumes it. If the furnace is strong, the fire obeys it. The master trains his body not for vanity, but for dominion. He builds strength, endurance, resilience. He learns to breathe through fire, to sit with desire, to endure the urge without bowing to it. Every push-up, every mile, every fast endured is a message to the flesh. I am master or. And the body, once governed, becomes an ally rather than an enemy. The fifth ritual is silence. The world is loud. Temptation is louder. But the master withdraws into silence to reset his dominion. In silence he sees clear. In silence he feels the fire without being ruled by it. In silence he converses with the higher self, with the infinite intelligence that whispers direction. Every day you give yourself to silence. Even for a few minutes you sharpen your awareness of energy. You learn to see it, to feel it, to redirect it. And in that awareness, mastery is born.